The mountain was quiet that morning. Too quiet. The kind of silence that presses on your eardrums, that makes even your breath sound like a sin. Elena adjusted the strap of her pack and glanced over her shoulder. "We should turn back," she called, her voice sharp against the still air. The slope above them was a white wall, the wind whispering like a warning. Liam smiled over his shoulder, that same reckless grin she'd fallen for during their first climb together. "We're almost at the ridge. 10 more minutes, tops." She wanted to believe him. She always did. The snow beneath her boots gave a hollow sound, soft, shifting. Her stomach tightened. "The snowpack's too fresh," she said, scanning the slope with the practiced eyes of a mountaineer. "It's layered wrong. One wrong vibration." He waved her off. "You worry too much." That was the last thing she heard before the mountain exhaled. The sound started deep, like a groan from the earth's spine. Then a crack, sharp, final. The slope above them shattered. "Run!" she screamed, but there was nowhere to run. The avalanche came like a living thing, roaring, rolling, devouring everything in its path. She felt the world tilt and her body went weightless. Then she was falling, tumbling, choking on ice and snow. The sky disappeared. When she stopped, she was buried, half conscious, pinned by a slab of ice that pressed against her ribs like a fist. Her head throbbed. Darkness crept in. She heard his voice. Distant. Faint. "Elena." She tried to answer, but the snow swallowed her words. Her gloves clawed upward, fingers scraping at nothing. Panic clawed back. Then, a flash of movement above, the glint of his headlamp. Relief flooded her chest. He'd come for her. "Liam," she gasped, barely audible. "Help me." He looked down, eyes wide with terror. For a heartbeat, he hesitated. Their gazes locked, hers pleading, his uncertain. Then he turned away. She saw it clearly through the haze of snow and pain. He chose the rope dangling beside him, chose the upward path, chose life without her. "Don't," she tried to scream, but her lungs betrayed her. The beam of his light vanished into the blizzard. The cold did the rest. Her body grew numb first, then her thoughts. Memories flickered like fading stars, her father teaching her to tie knots, the first summit she'd reached, the warmth of Liam's hand in hers at dawn. All swallowed by white. But some stubborn ember inside refused to go out. The same will that had always pushed her higher, even when her body screamed to stop. She pressed her hand against the ice trapping her. Moved it an inch. Another. Hours, or days, passed. When they found her, she was barely alive, skin blue, fingers blackened. She didn't remember being carried off the mountain, only the feeling of being left. Later, in the hospital, when the rescuers told her Liam had made it down safely and never reported her missing until the next morning, something inside her went colder than the snow ever had. He said he'd thought she was dead. He said he was sorry. She said nothing. Years later, people would whisper about the woman who led the North Summit Rescue Division. The one who could find anyone, anywhere, no matter the storm. They'd say she had a gift. But the truth was simpler. She just knew what it felt like to be left behind. The rotor blades of the helicopter cut through the morning mist, scattering snow into glittering shards. Elena stood at the edge of the landing pad, her parka hood down despite the bitter wind. The cold didn't bother her anymore. It hadn't in years. "White oak conditions moving in by noon," said Captain Reyes, handing her a clipboard. "We've got 2 hikers overdue on the east face. Locals say they were tourists. No experience." Elena scanned the report. Young couple. Wrong trail. Classic story. "We'll find them," she said flatly. Reyes gave her a look. "You always do." She didn't answer. Instead, she turned toward the team assembling by the chopper, 4 people she trusted with her life. They were efficient, quiet, professionals who knew better than to ask about her past. The wind picked up as the new recruit arrived. She noticed him before she wanted to. He stepped out of the hangar, pulling off his sunglasses, his hair longer than she remembered. For a second, her mind refused to make the connection. The walk. The voice calling to the pilot. The tilt of his jaw. Liam. Her heart clenched so hard she thought she might be sick. He stopped a few feet from her, the recognition slow but unmistakable. His lips parted slightly, shock, guilt, something softer flickering in his eyes before he looked down. He said stiffly. "Reporting for assignment. Liam Cross, Certified Alpine Rescue." Reyes clapped him on the shoulder. "Cross comes highly recommended from the Cascades unit. Good climber, excellent endurance." Elena's mouth was dry. Welcome to the North Summit team, she managed, her tone neutral. We leave in 10. He nodded once. Understood. She turned away before her expression could betray her. The flight was short, turbulent. Clouds pressed low, and visibility dropped to almost nothing. The hum of the helicopter filled the silence, and Elena kept her focus on the GPS screen, refusing to glance at the man sitting across from her. But she could feel him watching her. Every few seconds, she caught it, his eyes flicking up, then down, like a habit he couldn't break. When they landed, the storm greeted them head-on. Snow whipped sideways, biting at any exposed skin. The team moved in practice formation, checking transceivers, securing ropes. Stay close to base range, she ordered through the radio. If you lose visibility, hold position. Liam's voice crackled back. Copy that, Chief. That title, Chief, hit like a blade turned inward. Hours passed. They found one of the hikers first, half buried near a rocky outcrop. Frostbitten but alive. The woman clung to Elena, sobbing, when they dug her out. He went higher, she cried. He said he'd get help. Elena glanced up at the ridge line. The same kind of slope. The same kind of storm. Her pulse quickened. Cross, she said into her MC. You're with me. He hesitated, then, Roger that. They climbed in silence, the wind screaming around them. The snow underfoot felt wrong, loose, untrustworthy. Halfway up, she finally said it, her voice like ice. I didn't know you were still in the mountains. He looked over, breath misting the air. I never really left. That's funny, she said, without turning. You left once before. He flinched. Even through the goggles and layers, she saw it. Elena, I thought you were gone, he said quietly. I swear to God, I thought. Save it, she snapped. We have a life to find. He nodded, saying nothing more. Above them, thunder rolled, a low, distant growl that made the snow vibrate under their boots. Elena froze. She looked up. The ridge was shifting. Liam, she said softly, the old fear returning. Run a scan on the slope. Now. He pulled out the sensor. The numbers spiked red. Her stomach dropped. Another avalanche was coming. The mountain moved like a living thing. A deep vibration rippled beneath their boots, then the air itself seemed to split apart. Move! Elena shouted, but the roar swallowed her words. Snow tore free from the ridge in a wall of white fury. The avalanche thundered toward them, faster than thought. Liam grabbed her arm, yanking her toward a cluster of jagged rocks. They dove behind the outcrop as the world turned to chaos. For several eternal seconds, the mountain buried them in noise and weight. Snow pummeled their backs, pressed against their helmets, clawed at their air. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Elena gasped, pushing herself up. Her heart hammered against her ribs. They were half buried, the rest of the team somewhere far below the slope. The radio on her shoulder hissed with static. Base, this is Delta 1, she said, voice shaking only slightly. We've been hit by secondary collapse. 2 members accounted for. Request coordinates. Silence. Only static. She exhaled sharply. Signals down. Liam was kneeling nearby, checking the gear. His face was pale, his eyes flicking between her and the storm. We're cut off, he said. We'll need to wait it out or move fast before another shift. She scanned the slope. It was too steep, too unstable. Moving suicide, she said. We dig in. Make a pocket. They worked side by side, digging a shallow trench under the overhang. The motion was mechanical, instinctive. When they were finally enclosed enough to shield from the wind, they sat opposite each other in the cramped hollow, breathing heavy. It was the first time in years they'd been alone. Elena busied herself with the transceiver, pretending not to notice how he kept glancing at her. Finally, he broke the silence. You shouldn't have brought me on this climb. She looked up sharply. I didn't choose you. Reyes said you did. Her jaw tightened. I approved a transfer request. I didn't check the name. A small, bitter smile ghosted across his lips. That sounds like you. She glared at him. You don't know me anymore. I never stopped knowing you, he said softly. I never stopped thinking about what I did. Her hands froze. For a moment, the wind was the only sound between them. You left me, she whispered. He nodded, eyes steady. Yes. The blunt honesty caught her off guard. I thought you were gone, he continued. I saw the slide take you. There was no signal, no sound, just snow. I panicked. Climbed down the wrong side. By the time I reached base, it was dawn. I told them you were gone because I thought. You thought saving yourself was the right choice. He winced. No. I thought there was no choice. She let out a bitter laugh. You had one. You always did. For a while, neither spoke. The wind howled outside their makeshift shelter, shaking loose bits of snow that fell between them like sand through an hourglass. Finally, Liam shifted closer. His voice was low, careful. You don't have to forgive me. I just want you to know. I never stopped seeing you there. Every climb, every rescue. You were always in the snow. Her throat burned. She looked away, blinking hard. You think words fix that? No, he said. But maybe actions can. She met his eyes then, tired, angry, haunted. Then start by surviving this storm. He gave a single nod. Yes, They huddled in silence as the storm raged on. Hours blurred into a grey haze of exhaustion. Once, when she dozed, she thought she felt his gloved hand brush against hers. Not a touch, not forgiveness, but a quiet promise. By dawn, the storm had passed. The sky was a clean, merciless blue. Elena crawled out first, scanning the slope below. Wreckage, snowdrifts, broken gear. No sign of the others yet. She turned to him. We move fast. We still have a hiker out there. He nodded, pulling on his pack. Lead the way. And for the first time since that day years ago, he didn't walk ahead of her. The sun cut through the storm clouds, weak and cold. Snow glittered over the ridge like broken glass. From above, the mountain looked peaceful again, its violence hidden beneath a sheet of white. Elena didn't trust it. Mountains never forgave. They just waited. She scanned the landscape through her binoculars. There, she said finally, pointing toward a narrow valley below. Tracks. Someone's moving east. Liam followed her gaze, squinting against the glare. That's a long way for someone without gear. Then we'd better move, she said, adjusting her rope harness. Radio's still out. We find them, we carry them down. They began their descent in silence, rope scraping against ice, crampons biting deep. Each step was measured, methodical, the way Elena lived her life now. 1 foot in front of the other. Never look back. But with Liam behind her, the past felt closer than the wind on her neck. Halfway down, his voice cut through the quiet. You know, I read every report about that avalanche. She didn't turn. Why? Because I needed to know how it happened. What I missed. You missed courage, she said coldly. He winced but didn't argue. Maybe. But you should know something. His voice lowered. You weren't supposed to be on that climb. That made her pause. What? The company, our guide permit, had warnings about that sector. Weak snowpack, hidden crevasse. I told them it wasn't safe, but the investors wanted photos for the expedition brochure. You took the lead spot because you didn't trust me. Her grip on the rope tightened. You're saying it was my fault. I'm saying it wasn't just mine. The words hit like a crack in the ice, sharp, unexpected, dangerous. She turned, eyes narrowing. You think that helps? No, he said softly. But it's the truth. For a moment, the only sound was the wind moaning across the ridge. Elena turned away and kept climbing. The mountain had taken enough from her already. She wouldn't let it take her anger, too. They found the hiker just before dusk, huddled under an outcropping, half-conscious and frostbitten. A young man, barely 20, his lips blue and eyes unfocused. Liam crouched beside him, checking vitals. He's alive, he said. Weak pulse. Needs fluids. Elena dropped to her knees beside them, pulling out a thermal blanket. As she wrapped it around the boy, his cracked lips moved. Other one, he whispered. She froze. What other one? The hiker's eyes rolled back, unfocused. He said he'd find help. Liam met her gaze. There were 2. Looks like it, she said grimly. We move. But as they prepared to lift the boy, the slope trembled again, a faint, rhythmic vibration beneath the snow. Not thunder. Not weather. What is that? Liam said. Elena pressed a gloved hand to the ground. Her eyes widened. Crack propagation. Another avalanche was building, This one massive. She looked at Liam, then at the hiker. They wouldn't make it far. Up there, he said, pointing toward a narrow ice cave above the ridge. Shelter. They half carried, half dragged the hiker up the slope as the rumble grew louder. Snow hissed down around them, the air heavy with static. Just as the mountain released again, they dove into the cave's entrance. The world outside roared to white. Inside, the cave glowed faintly blue, light filtering through walls of ancient ice. The air was still, too still. Liam laid the hiker down gently. He'll make it through the night. Elena sank against the wall, chest heaving. We'll wait until it settles. Then we move. Liam nodded, sitting opposite her. You used to say that, wait until it settles. Every time we fought. She gave a tired half-smile. It never did. He smiled faintly. No. It didn't. For a moment, the years fell away, the anger, the distance, the silence. There were only two climbers again, bound by the same rope, facing the same storm. But somewhere deep in the cave, the mountain groaned, long and low. A sound like a warning. Elena looked toward the shadows stretching deeper into the ice. Something's down there, she said quietly. Liam switched on his headlamp. The beam cut into the darkness, and caught something half buried in the frozen wall. A broken ice axe. Old. Rusted. And carved into its handle, barely visible through the frost, was her name. Elena. Elena stared at the ice axe until her breath fogged the air between them. Her name, carved in faint, jagged letters along the handle, looked like something scrawled in desperation. A relic from the dead. She took a step closer. That's impossible, she murmured. My gear was recovered years ago. Liam's beam swept over the wall. Maybe it wasn't all recovered. He chipped gently at the frozen surface, the metal of his crampon striking the ice with a dull ring. A piece broke free, revealing more, fragments of rope, a torn strap, something glinting beneath layers of frost. Elena crouched beside him, scraping with her gloves until a nameplate emerged. It was from a rescue harness. The serial number was familiar. Her throat went dry. That's mine, she whispered. Liam glanced up, concern in his voice. Elena, what if this is the same slope? The one from... She cut him off. No. That was 20 kilometers north. Unless the map was wrong. Her jaw clenched. It wasn't wrong. But the evidence in front of her said otherwise. The hiker moaned behind them, pulling her out of her thoughts. He was stirring, delirious, muttering something she couldn't quite make out. She moved to his side. Easy. You're safe now. The boy's cracked lips formed a single word. Bodies. Elena froze. What? He swallowed painfully. We saw bodies in the ice. Thought they were old climbers. His eyelids fluttered. One had red jacket. Like his. He turned his head weakly toward Liam. Elena's stomach twisted. How long ago? Yesterday, the boy breathed. Then he went limp, sliding back into unconsciousness. Liam's expression hardened. We need to see it. Elena hesitated. Our first priority is keeping him alive. And if those bodies are the missing hiker, or part of the old expedition, you'll never forgive yourself for walking away. The words cut sharper than the wind outside. He was right. He knew her too well. She grabbed her headlamp and rope. 15 minutes, she said. Then we come back. The cave tunneled deeper than they expected, narrowing until they had to crawl on hands and knees. The air grew colder, heavier, as though the mountain itself was holding its breath. Liam led the way, his light bouncing off the frozen walls. You ever think, he said quietly, maybe the mountain remembers us? She frowned. Mountains don't care who climbs them. Maybe not, he said. But sometimes, it feels like they choose who comes back. They reached a wider chamber, the walls glittering like glass. And then they saw them, two shapes encased in the ice, faint outlines of human forms. One wore a torn red jacket. Liam's flashlight trembled slightly. That's mine, he whispered. Elena turned slowly. What are you talking about? He stepped closer, voice breaking. That jacket, I lost it on the descent. After the avalanche. I dropped it when I climbed down the wrong ridge. Her breath hitched. So you did come back? I did, he said quietly. I climbed back up the next morning. I thought I'd find you here. I dug until my hands bled, until I collapsed. His voice cracked. The rescue team found me half buried. They thought I'd gone delirious. Maybe I did. She stared at him, shock and anger colliding with something deeper. Why didn't you ever tell me? I tried, he said. You wouldn't see me. Wouldn't answer. And maybe I didn't deserve to. Elena's knees felt weak. The cave spun around her, the ice, the ghosts, the echo of everything she'd refused to face. She pressed a hand against the frozen wall, against the faint outline of the red jacket. Her own reflection stared back at her in the sheen of the ice, pale, trembling, alive. Then who are they? She whispered. Liam shook his head. I don't know. A low groan rolled through the cave, the sound of ice shifting under strain. Cracks spiderwebbed across the walls, thin but growing. Elena, Liam said sharply. We need to move. Now. She tore her gaze from the frozen figures and nodded. Together they scrambled back through the tunnel, snow and shards of ice raining down around them. They reached the hiker just as the ground shuddered. The entrance collapsed behind them in a cascade of white. Outside, the sky was darkening again, storm clouds building over the peaks. Elena looked back at the buried cave, her chest tight. Some truths, she said quietly, should have stayed under the ice. Liam's jaw set. And some need to be dug out, no matter what they cost. The wind howled between them, a sound like the mountain laughing. Somewhere below, the rescue beacon finally flickered to life, just in time for the next storm. The storm came faster than forecasted, an angry wall of snow clawing down the valley. Elena could see it rolling toward them, swallowing light, sound, and distance. Move! She shouted over the wind. Head for the ridge line. Liam hoisted the semi-conscious hiker over his shoulder, muscles trembling under the weight. The man was light, but the air was thin and cruel. Every step felt heavier than the last. The wind howled louder, tearing at their ropes, pelting them with ice shards. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The world shrank to the few feet between them. Elena led, navigating by instinct and memory. The ridge ahead blurred in and out of view like a mirage. Her compass spun uselessly in the magnetic field of the storm. Behind her, Liam's breathing was ragged. We're not going to make it across before it hits. She turned, eyes fierce through the frost clinging to her lashes. We don't have a choice. He laughed once, bitter and breathless. You always say that. A crack of thunder rolled overhead, deep and guttural, and the slope beneath them groaned in answer. The ground shifted. Elena's eyes widened. Liam. The ridge gave way. Snow and rock ripped loose beneath their boots, and the world fell out from under them. She reached out, grasping for anything, his hand, a rope, salvation, but gravity didn't care. They tumbled down the slope in a blur of white and pain. The hiker was torn from Liam's grasp, disappearing into the void below. Elena hit hard, her breath exploding from her lungs. Then, darkness. When she woke, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Her head throbbed. Her right arm ached, pinned under a sheet of ice. For a moment, she didn't remember where, or when, she was. The silence was suffocating, familiar in a way that turned her stomach. Then she heard it. Elena. A voice through the snow. Muffled. Desperate. Her heart lurched. Liam, she croaked. Hold on. I'm here, just, don't move. She tried to push herself free, but pain flared bright behind her eyes. Panic surged, the same panic from years ago. The cold. The darkness. The feeling of being left. Her breaths came fast, uneven. Not again, she whispered to herself. Not again. Talk to me, his voice came again, closer now. Don't shut down on me, you hear? I'm coming. A shadow moved through the white. His hands appeared, scraping and digging, pulling at chunks of ice until her arm came free. He cradled her shoulder, breath steaming in the air between them. I've got you, he said. For a moment, she couldn't speak. The sound of his voice, the way his gloved hand trembled as it brushed frost from her cheek, it was all too close to that day. You came back, she whispered. Of course I did. Her throat tightened. You didn't last time. He flinched but didn't look away. Then let this be the time I get it right. They stayed like that for a moment, two broken silhouettes in a storm that didn't care. Then she remembered. The hiker. Liam nodded grimly. Below us. 50 meters. I saw movement before I reached you. She struggled to her feet. Her arm throbbed, but she forced herself upright. We go after him. Liam grabbed her wrist. You're hurt. So is he. He looked at her for a long second, then nodded. Then we go together. They descended carefully, roped together this time. Every step felt like a question the mountain might not answer. Finally, they spotted the hiker sprawled across a narrow ledge, unconscious, but alive. Elena knelt beside him, checking his pulse. His breathing. Liam exhaled, his relief visible in the slump of his shoulders. Thank God. Elena looked up at him then, eyes unreadable. If we're getting off this mountain alive, we need to trust each other. He met her gaze steadily. Then trust me now. He clipped her harness to his and began the ascent toward the extraction ridge, hauling both her and the hiker with measured, careful movements. Every pull of the rope was a promise, silent, heavy, unspoken. As they climbed, snow began to fall again, soft this time, almost gentle. The storm easing, the wind sighing as if the mountain itself was tired. When they finally reached the top, Elena turned to look at the valley below. Somewhere down there, buried beneath the ice, were pieces of their old lives, fragments of guilt and loss frozen into the mountain forever. Liam's voice was quiet beside her. It's not over yet. She nodded slowly. No. But it will be. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she meant the climb, or them. The rescue helicopter was a dark speck against the storm. Its distant hum was the sweetest sound Elena had heard in days. Signals live, Liam said, checking the locator beacon on his vest. They've got us on radar. Elena nodded, her gaze sweeping across the ridge. The hiker lay cocooned in an emergency blanket, pale but stable. The wind had softened to a whisper, a deceptive calm after chaos. We just need to hold until extraction, she said. But mountains had a cruel sense of timing. A low, grinding rumble echoed from beneath them, deep, guttural, wrong. The ridge shifted, snow fracturing in a spiderweb pattern beneath their boots. Liam's eyes shot up. It's the ice shelf, it's giving way. Elena dropped to her knees, pressing her palm against the snow. The vibration was spreading fast, a pulse running through the glacier itself. They didn't have minutes. Maybe seconds. The ledge won't hold three of us, Liam shouted over the rising wind. We're not leaving him, she snapped. He moved closer, voice rough. Listen to me. The shelf collapses. We all go down. We need to lighten the load. She glared at him. You're not doing this again. Elena. Don't you dare finish that sentence. He met her fury with something steadier, acceptance. You know the math. The mountain groaned again. Cracks raced outward like lightning beneath their feet. Snow began to drift into the widening gaps, hissing like sand into a grave. Elena's heart pounded. The hiker moaned weakly, oblivious. Liam's rope harness creaked as he adjusted it. She saw what he was doing, the way he unclipped one side, the tiny metallic click nearly lost to the wind. Don't, she said. Her voice was shaking now. He smiled faintly. You always were the better climber. Liam. The ledge buckled. He staggered but kept his balance, tightening the knot around her harness instead. You can pull him up when they get here. You'll have a chance. That's all that matters. She lunged forward, grabbing his jacket. No. You think dying makes you forgiven? You think that's what I want? He looked down at her hand on his chest. Snow clung to his lashes like frost. No, he said softly. But maybe it's the only way I make this right. The ledge gave another shudder, splitting with a crack that echoed through the valley. The world lurched sideways. Elena's scream was lost in the roar as the shelf broke. The hiker slid toward the edge. She grabbed him with one hand, her other still clamped around Liam's rope. The force nearly tore her arm from its socket. She held on anyway, teeth gritted, every muscle burning. Cut me loose. Liam shouted. You'll both die if you don't. Not again, she cried. I'm not leaving you again. He looked at her then, eyes raw and desperate, and for a moment the years between them vanished. There was only the cold, the wind, and two people chained to their choices. The rope creaked. Threads began to snap. Elena, he said softly, it's okay. And before she could stop him, he reached down and sliced his own rope. The snap was louder than the storm. He fell backward into the abyss, his silhouette swallowed by snow and silence. The recoil nearly dragged her down too. She screamed, hauling the hiker up with everything left in her. The rope burned through her gloves, skin tearing, pain blinding. Then the helicopter's spotlight cut through the white, a golden circle of salvation. Voices shouted above, ropes dropped, hands reached. Strong arms pulled her and the hiker aboard. Elena! Reyes's voice cut through the chaos. Where's Cross? She didn't answer. Couldn't. Her body was shaking, her throat raw. She stared out the open door at the endless expanse of white below. Somewhere beneath that sea of snow, he was gone. Again. But this time, she hadn't been the one left behind. Back at base, hours later, Elena sat in the med tent. Her hands were bandaged, her skin blistered and raw. Outside, rescue teams were still combing the slopes, though they all knew what they wouldn't find. Reyes stepped in quietly. We'll keep searching until dark. She nodded absently. Sometimes, Reyes said gently, people don't need saving. They just need peace. When he left, Elena reached into her pocket. Something small and cold pressed against her palm, Liam's old compass. She must have grabbed it during the climb. The needle spun lazily, lost, refusing to point north. She stared at it for a long time before whispering, "You found your way, didn't you?" Outside, the mountain was silent again. But it wasn't cruel. Not anymore. Spring came late to the north summit. Even in May, the peak still gleamed white against a sky the color of steel. The ice never really left, it just shifted, waiting for the next cold season to reclaim what little warmth it allowed. Elena stood alone on the ridge, her parka flapping against the wind. Below her, the valley stretched into a mosaic of shadow and sun. Somewhere beneath that endless white lay the pieces of a story that had taken years to bury. In her gloved hand, she held Liam's compass. The needle quivered, still uncertain, its face scratched from years of use. She wasn't here for rescue work this time. She wasn't here for anyone but him. Team Alpha to base, a voice crackled over the radio clipped to her shoulder. We've reached grid 28. No sign of remains. She pressed the button. Copy. Stand down for the day. They'd searched for 2 months. Found fragments of gear, a torn rope, a pocket knife rusted nearly beyond recognition. But not him. Never him. It was almost poetic, she thought. The mountain that had taken him once letting him disappear for good this time. She crouched, running her fingers through the snow. It melted instantly on her skin. You always hated the cold, she said quietly. Said it made your bones ache. The wind stirred, carrying the faint hiss of shifting powder. She smiled faintly. Still pretending you can hear me, huh? A soft crunch of boots in snow broke the solitude. Captain Reyes approached, stopping a few feet away. Didn't expect you to come up here alone. I needed to, she said. He nodded, saying nothing. He'd worked with her long enough to know when silence was better than comfort. After a while, he spoke softly. We're closing the file, Elena. Officially. No one survives a fall like that. I know. You could come down with the rest of us. Start fresh. Her eyes stayed on the horizon. That's the plan. Reyes hesitated, then touched her shoulder. You did everything you could. She smiled sadly. This time, yes. He gave a brief nod, then turned back toward the helicopter waiting on the plateau below. His footsteps faded until she was alone again. The sky was turning gold. Elena sat down on the ridge's edge, legs dangling over the drop. The same drop that had taken him. The same place she had once almost died. She remembered the first time they climbed together, the way he teased her for overpacking, how his laughter had echoed through the canyons. How safe she'd felt with him before she ever knew what real danger meant. The compass felt heavy in her hand. She thumbed the worn initials on its back, LC. You were wrong, you know, she said softly. About fixing things with death. A gust of wind answered, whistling through the valley. She smiled through the ache in her chest. You fixed it by coming back. For the first time in years, the bitterness in her voice was gone. She stood, unclipped the compass from its chain, and placed it gently in the snow. The metal gleamed in the light, a tiny spark against the vast white. For what it's worth, she whispered. I forgive you. Then, after a pause, and I hope you forgave me too. The wind picked up again, swirling the snow around her boots, almost like an answer. She turned toward the descent route, the long, winding path that led back to the base. Each step felt lighter than the last. When she reached the ridge's bend, she stopped and looked back one final time. The compass was already half buried, its glint fading under a thin veil of snow. And just for a heartbeat, no more than that, she thought she saw him standing there in the distance, at the edge of the ridge. Not the man from the avalanche, but the one who had smiled at her before it all went wrong. She blinked, and he was gone. The mountain exhaled, a soft whisper of snow drifting down like a sigh. Elena adjusted her pack, pulled up her hood, and started the long trek home. The sky above her cleared, sunlight breaking through the clouds. For the first time in a long while, she didn't look back. The long winter was finally over. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.